Okay, good evening, and welcome to our Selectboard workshop. First order of business is to call the meeting to order and to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt the agenda as warned.
All in favor of the approval of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
It's like was remind. I try to remind the public that's here that this is a workshop, not a regular select board meeting. We still try to handle things very similar, but we are looking for input from the public regarding the process of building the budget. So don't feel you can only speak once. If you want to speak, raise your hand, and we will have to have you come up to the podium so that Keith on the Zoom can hear, and if anyone else joins in on the Zoom. But that's the only formality that we have here this evening. So that's all. Anyone else have anything to say?
Nope.
A lot of things are just discussion on ideas and whatever. So there's no bad suggestions as far as I'm concerned. Because it's very early. It's very early in the process. We do have the first draft that Beth, Jackie, and Bill have worked on, and every department head. So that's kind of a starting point. Do you want to give us any highlights on this, or?
Do we want to go with?
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Yeah, you want us to do the purchase order first?
If you would.
Yeah, we'll go to item 3. Consider purchase order 12503 for road zone.
So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, we did get we get the state price on road salt. It's not something that the town goes out to bid for by itself. In FY24, we paid $86.50. Last year, it went up less than 1% to $87.25. This year, it's up 13.18% to $98.75 a ton, and we buy 1,000 tons. So we have a purchase order here for 1,000 tons of road salt at the state's quote of $98.75, which is $98,750. Our budgeted amount for road salt is only $90,000. So I'm just advising that this is a potential overage in the budget year that we've just started.
Pleasure of the board.
Yeah. Do we have any left? We have any
We do.
left? Go.
We do. I asked Jeremy. We have something to start with, and he is happy on the probably, I guess you'd say, not the downtown roads and not the heavily traveled roads, but where he can, he's happy to mix sand in with the salt this winter to make it go a little further. So we put sand on the dirt roads. We have tried to put just salt on the asphalt roads, but we can mix in some dirt or some sand with the road salt this year, depending on how the winter seems to be going.
And do we have, you said we have some, do we have an idea in terms of tonnage? How much?
I bet we have like 5 loads, which, we were kind of getting toward the end of stuff last year. A storm, maybe.
And all accounts suggest this winter is going to be pretty snowy, but I guess who knows?
Didn't we buy stuff through the winter too?
We keep buying. So this is not, we're not going to receive 1,000 tons. We couldn't store 1,000 tons. So this is just the select board authorizing this price for up to 1,000 tons. And we just kind of like chip away at it as we can store it.
Right, but we bought salt last year,
we bought salt from Herrera's.
Yes, so we used 1,000 ton and then some.
No, so we didn't really exceed the 1,000 ton quantity, but we got to a point where Cargill, who's our normal salt supplier, didn't have any that they could get to us. So we had to go to an alternate supplier, and that was the two, 3 trips to Rutland or whatever it was.
Okay.
So in theory, we wouldn't buy it. We could possibly not end up buying that 1,000 tons.
Yes, very possible.
We're just authorizing you if it becomes necessary up to that amount.
Right.
Okay.
And that holds the price. Once you say yes, then they can't raise the price during the year.
For that quantity. So if we buy 1,200 tons, the other 200 tons could be at a higher rate.
Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion we approve the purchase order.
Second.
And second, any further discussion?
Yeah, with the understanding that we're not gonna go out and plunk down $98,750 for 1,000 pounds. That, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I was just a little concerned about the overage, but we may not have them.
I guess last year it was not a supply issue on Cargill's point. It was a transportation getting it out to the towns issue. They had some trucking
Like the idea of
tightness.
sand too. I think that Jeremy's come up with a good idea and we should encourage that. Okay, we have a motion in a second. All in favor of approval of this purchase, say aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed? No.
Okay, thank you.
So now we're into the budget. Would you like to start with any opening remarks? Or you want us to start firing questions or discussions or?
If I could give you just a couple of opening remarks about how it's set up. So this is set up very similar to last year's format, where we take it out of NEMRIC and put it like into an Excel spreadsheet so that as the board and the public and the workshops wants to try out, well, what if this, what if that, we can see what the impact is. And I would say the biggest structural change in the budget that you all will have noticed is that, as we discussed before, we took the buildings and grounds department and stopped using it. And we've taken all of those line items and assigned those to the different departments that get the benefit of the building or the fuel or whatever it is that used to be in the buildings and grounds department. And the one person who was the staff member there is assigned to the highway department because it's essentially like highway tasks. So that's the structural change that was made this year. We brought the budget column for FY26 into that department's budget so that it won't look like a big overage for the department. And then there's no more FY26 column being used in buildings and grounds department. The other thing to look at, I think the important stuff is on the final page of the budget, there's calling out of different amounts of money, not just by department, right? By department is a great way for us to kind of categorize money for spending, but you can also look at budgets in other ways. And you'll see under the little chart that says key metrics comparisons, you'll see the total wages and payroll expenses is, it's more than half the budget. Like that's the biggest chunk is paying for the town staff. And then there's benefits, which is the next line down. And together those two make 61% of the budget. There was a great discovery. I did look back over the past 4 budget years, and the top line there that says BLS New England 12-month inflation rate. So that's the actual Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index for New England increases. And over the last 4 years, that totals 15.5%. The Selectboard gave raises to the Brandon staff that are indicated on the next line, 4%, 5%, 4%, 2.5%, which also totals 15.5%. So I think essentially the tack that the board has taken and the management has taken has kept pace with inflation in a respectful way for the staff and also for the taxpayers. The staff is getting paid today in what are the same dollars, so to speak, as 4 years ago. There's a few different cost of living adjustment scenarios you could consider for this year. The FY25 number for the consumer price index in New England is 3.3%. And there's a dollar impact given for a 2%, a 2.5%, a 3%, a 3.5%, a 4%. And then I plugged in a 3.5% down at the bottom. So this is a section of the budget where there's a lot of results that will happen from moving just 1 or 2 numbers one way or the other, making a big decision about cost of living or a big decision about health insurance. And the last point would be health insurance. The actual increase this year is only 2.5%, which is really a relief compared to the previous 2 years that were double digits. So that's good stuff. Where the board's going to need to make some judgment is with the police department. We have some open positions in the police department. We actually have 2 interviews for 2 different positions, one for a lieutenant and one for an officer on Wednesday of this week. They've had an initial interview with the chief, and now they're having a second interview with a panel. And we don't know what those folks or the other position that's still funded, we don't know what they're going to need for health insurance. There's really no way to know that, and you can't ask that before you hire them. So it's kind of a question of budgeting for the most expensive scenario is what is written out here. So budgeting for the most expensive scenario would be like another $100,000 on health insurance, which you see it represented there as 96,123. 1 point on this budget is $34,000. So essentially, that would be 3% increase on the budget, just in case. So that's my introduction to the numbers that you've got there.
I think an interesting place to start would be the conversation you had with us today regarding the capital plan, because the capital plan is the new plan. And last year we funded the capital with an appropriation. And Sue Gage gave you some information on how another town does it that sounded pretty interesting.
Oh, you want to talk about that?
So
Okay.
I was wondering if you would maybe tell the board about that, and then we can just see how anyone feels kind of about that. So that has an overall effect.
Yes. So the operating budget that some folks have, there's a copy maybe or two left on the desk there by Jeff, perhaps, if somebody in the room wants to look at one. The operating budget doesn't account for any capital spending to replace the highway tandem. You remember when we had the department heads in last time around, we talked about there's probably already enough money in the police labor line not to be expended, that if you wanted to replace a cruiser, you could probably do it right out of the police budget and no harm. The oldest tandem, the older of the two tandems that the highway department has is the Mac, and they've gotten a quote to replace it with a like piece of equipment that would be like in the $300,000 range. Those kinds of things we don't pay for all at once. We pay for them over time, like we did with the replacement truck last year. So Sue Gage is working with the bank. She's got a quote. It's roughly $50,000 a year. I don't have the interest rate right here, but I can get it to you if you want. And my proposal to you is that you don't try to shoehorn a $50,000 truck payment into this budget. My proposal to you is that you pay for that as part of this capital plan by using our capital funding stream, which is the local option tax, combined with the appropriation article that the voters approved last year. So the voters approved $50,000, and that was put into a capital replacement fund together with $20,000, which is roughly the amount that was realized from selling the surplus cruisers and the older pickup truck and stuff like that. So there's about $70,000 there. The 1% local option tax has been clocking in about $300,000 a year. And the obligations that the board has placed on those things are roughly $25,000 a year for the next 4 years to take care of the replacement truck payment for the truck that we had to buy last winter, the smaller truck. You have talked about, road paving coming pretty hard out of the 1% money. So you remember last year, Jeremy kind of worked up a quote on Town Farm Road and a quote on Wheeler Road. We did Town Farm Road. So if you wanted to do Wheeler Road, that'd be $175,000 out of the 1% money. And so those funds, the voter approved article plus the 1% tax could carry a truck payment without trouble for FY27 if you want to do that. What I think Doug is talking about is, besides those two things, there's a couple of other ways that other towns around us are addressing capital funding. So Bristol is the one I was previously familiar with. They have a department in their budget. So instead of asking the voters for an article, like we have been doing, they have a good conversation with the voters and they tell them, we're not going to ask you for an article anymore, but we're going to put the amount of that article into the budget as a capital department in the budget to fund it. So the net impact on the taxpayer would be neutral, but it will make because the appropriation drops off the tax bill, it does make the operating budget go up on the tax bill. And that can be a hard sell, as we've found out sometimes. So that's how Bristol's done it. They've done it successfully for a number of years. What Sue brought up to us is the way they do it in Colchester. They have the voters, they give the voters a question that asks for a half a cent on the tax rate. So we're allowed to ask the voters for X number of dollars, which is how Brandon has always presented its budget. It's $3,403,965 of spending with X amount to be raised by taxes, yes or no. You can also have another question that says, would you approve a tax rate just for capital, for a capital plan, to fund a capital plan? And that tax rate stays in place for whatever the board decides to ask. And in Colchester, they ask for 5 years of that tax rate. So it's one vote that gets you a 5-year kind of level, steady funding amount coming in to fund your capital plan. We would not need to ask the voters for $3 million or $1 million or $500,000, right? We would need to ask the voters for a much more modest amount of money if we're just talking about equipment.
So let's say we have an amount to be raised by taxes that is
$3 million.
$3 million.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, we'd ask for whatever percentage of
We'd come
that
up
is
with,
to be like $50,000.
right. We would come up with the dollar figure that we think is correct and ask the voters for a tax rate that would generate that. But the tax rate would stay in place for more than just this
Right.
year, maybe 3 years, maybe 5, whatever you think is the smart move.
But it would be a separate ballot issue from the actual
Separate
budget.
question.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it would show up on
Yes,
tax bill, very
show up on
similar
tax.
to the way fire district or
Or appropriations.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Not in the budget, but it's the voters realizing that we have worked out a new capital plan, how we're gonna fund it, and to try to keep it on the general operating budget steady. And I kind of like the idea. If it failed, then we would fall back on 1 year of just being able to use local options tax and what we have.
Right.
So it's
But-
basically kind of a long-term appropriation.
It's meant to stabilize the capital funding, so it's not year to year dependent on that article.
Right.
Yes.
And when we do our town meetings, we can break it down dollars and cents wise based on each evaluation of a home, so everyone could kind of see what it is.
Yes.
And I mean, even at a half cent, which we wouldn't be anywhere near needing that, it'd be a really small number.
Barry had his hand up.
In looking
Come-
at.
Podium, please.
Come to the lectern so Keith can hear you. Sorry.
Sorry, Tom.
Trying to save my hips, I played golf.
We can pass the microphone around.
Yeah, we can.
In looking at different ways in the past that we've addressed this and tried to raise money for this. They've all had, different approaches. The appropriation, diddling a little bit with the overall budget that this year it's this much and then next year it might be less, next year it might be more, all warrants a lot of explanation to why that may be. To the people that even care to want to hear the explanation as opposed to are just taken back by the change. This seems to me to be the most transparent approach because it's very much out in front of here's what it is, here's what it's for. It's still a ballot option, so you still have the ability to say yay or nay. There is no misunderstanding, I should say, of where the money's coming from or if people are approving money, where they're approving it for. I like the idea because I think it is probably the most transparent and still gives you the flexibility of a term that voters can decide, as opposed to putting it into the budget, that voters can decide whether they still agree with or not. So for those reasons, I do like that approach.
I like it also, Marion wants to talk about it, it also allows us to kind of build a capital fund if we don't spend it all in given year, we've got the funds there. And we know that there's always capital things that we need to do. So now we've been totally just depending on lot to do with our local option stack. And this would be another better, a way that everyone could plan 5 years in advance. Management could plan in their spending and public could plan their tax plans.
I'm not in favor of it. I don't think it's a great idea. It'll be more confusing on the ballot because you're not going to get people to understand or to know, and it's something else. Put it all in or don't have it at all.
So would you, be in favor of just having a capital line item in the budget?
I'd rather have one less thing to vote on.
I think we're also gonna run into the issue of people saying, not entirely wrongly, why aren't we dependent on LOT for this? That's what it's theoretically for, and in fact is for. You know, I hear the stabilization argument, the planning argument, but I think that's gonna be a tough sell with a lot of people.
Trish,
I think the Colchester one sounds a little bit more convoluted and it's going to take a lot more explaining. I think if we're committed to having a capital budget, then we should have a capital budget. It should be in the budget. It should be a line item. It should be there for everyone to see. And you just know that that's what it's going to be for, rather than having to have another whole conversation and another thing to vote on. And I don't know, I would just rather have it be, we're making a commitment that we're going to start doing this and it's going to be part of the budget.
Year over year.
We're always going to need to replace things.
the first year if we move capital into the budget, the first year.
Gonna be a
we'll
hit.
say it's $50,000. That's gonna be a 1.5% jump in the budget just in that item. So, the question would be, when's the time to do that? Whether it's now, whether it's, when a bond is paid off. Or, or when, I mean,
Maybe it's when you don't do an appropriation.
yeah, that way we wouldn't do an appropriation. It would be
It would
in.
just
And
be
the
in.
first year is gonna be a hit that people are gonna see and feel. After that, if we stick to the same number every year, then this is not a
It'll be a wash.
budgetary increase kind of thing going up and down. That's what I think would be best to, try to keep things as stable as we can.
Steph, do you remember, can you find the, vote totals on the capital appropriation versus the budget from this past March? I'm just curious what the
Yeah.
relative
Yeah.
support was.
While he's doing that, go ahead.
Jan Coolidge, if you did the way that Colchester did it, to me, that throws your transparency out the window, because you're making so many changes with what you're doing in the budget. Then you add this piece, they're just like, what's going on? I don't understand it. You know what I mean? It's like the simpler way you can do it, to me, is the easier way. Get rid of the appropriations, put it in the budget, and it's plain and simple. 50,000 for capital. And like you said, it's not going to affect their taxes any. It's just that it's not appropriations. It's just moved into the budget. It's a zero sum, but it's a one line item in the budget. Everybody knows what it's for. To me, that's the clearest way.
Could you honestly forecast? Yeah, may I speak? That a sum of money is going to be a forever sum of money that'll be necessary for capital improvements. You can't. I think it's a dynamic thing. I think a term where you identify what your needs may be, and you put that out to the voters, is a reasonable approach. I think to put a block of money into the budget for year over year, and then at some point in 6 or 7 years from now, that's not adequate anymore, and there has to be an increase. It, to me, just doesn't seem to make sense. As an operating expense, I don't think it really should be part of the budget. I think the purpose of it is to use it for, singular type needs, not for operating costs. So that's why I think it should be separate. My personal opinion.
I mean, I guess most of you remember what happened the last time that we took something that had been an appropriation and put it in the budget, and how that worked out for us. So, Nothing. Amnesia. So, I mean, I think that what I hear is a lot of people being like, yeah, we think it's a good idea to be putting money aside for this capital thing. We have some different ideas about how to do it. I just, it would make me feel better if whatever we decided, whether we're going to do appropriation every year or whether we're going to not do an appropriation but put it in the budget, or whether we're going to do this term thing, there are people that we are going to need help selling this to. And so, it's maybe not as big a number as that last time, but there are some people that any number is a big number. So
Cecil, that's what I believe the transparency. I think there's zero transparency in the appropriation because a large percent of people that vote, they vote for that appropriation and don't even make the connection that that's a bottom line number that's going to come in on their tax burden. I think there's no transparency in that. I think clearly identifying what your objective of putting this fund together for is the transparency. And there should be no doubt in anyone's mind when they're voting yes or no on this, what the impact on them is and what it's for. I think the appropriations is just way, way, way too cloudy.
Yeah.
Did you say it was 12 cents per 100 or 12 cents per 1,000 of the Colchester?
Half a cent per 100.
Half a cent per 100. Okay.
My point about putting it in the budget is that you're not saying that forever and ever, it's always going to be 50,000 or whatever it is, but it's a line item, just like every other line item in your budget. You look at every year and you decide whether it goes up or down or what. So I think that's the discussion would be had every year. Is this the appropriate amount for what we're planning? But it's in there for anybody to see that this is for capital. It's not, and it would not be an appropriation that would go off the.
Right, and it would always be subject to being cut if
Just like every
healthcare
other
costs
item
get
is,
too
yeah.
high.
It's like every other.
Yeah, and that's what I think that kind of defeats the purpose. It would always be subject to scrutiny if some other item grows out of proportion.
I have a report. So in Brandon last year, the budget passed 607 to 318, which is 65% in favor. And the capital question passed 567 to 333, which is 61% in favor.
okay.
So not a huge. Yeah, my concern was, even with a similar margin, my concern is folks approved an appropriation one time. And as you said, there are a lot of people who will just vote yes or vote no on appropriations. But I hesitate to say that voters approving an appropriation one time means they've approved it perpetually or for a term. I don't have a strong opinion yet.
Yeah. I mean, relying on
this, but-
appropriations is always
Right.
a little,
Right.
yeah.
All right, I can see that there's not a clear path.
Just introducing.
Yeah, we're just
Yeah.
introducing it, and I think it would be worth running some numbers.
Yeah, mocking up numbers.
on-
be really
on,
helpful.
What that would look.
Like a $100,000 house. We said the average house in Brandon is what, 180-ish,
186.
and run that as far as 180 as the tax assessment, and just see what that would do. And then how much the money that would give us, and then we can approach it again. I think it's an interesting concept, and I don't know if it's the right concept. I would like to not keep having an appropriation every year, so. Okay,
Are we,
So other than that, I'm happy to just take questions as we go line by line or whatever you want to.
We certainly need a dump truck this year. I mean, we just bought one last year, so I was curious if,
So, so this isn't like for this winter, right? This is for sometime after July, with the budget we're talking about. And Jeremy's take on it is that the Mac we have that he is hoping to replace, he says it still has value. We should be able to get a good price for it. It's not in danger of, not passing inspection or anything, but I want to say it's a 2016. I'll have to double check.
So
It's in for service right now. Like it's doing the things that equipment does as it ages. Like it's taking more service than it used to.
do we have an idea, like annual cost for service of it? I mean, okay, I'm the person that runs my car until it literally falls in half because of the rust. So,
So we don't have it broken out in the budget, and so I could easily we do have it at the town office broken out. We have that line item for vehicle maintenance broken out by truck number 1, 2, 3, and we can certainly get that for the board.
I mean, I think the other reality is we're going to have to replace it in the relatively near
It won't live
future.
forever.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And things aren't getting any cheaper. So I don't know.
It's in right now, I guess, for a week, and it will be about $4,200
Okay.
is the bill.
I was thinking before we went line by line to have some of these kind of conceptual kind of discussions or whatever. So I would maybe question that the health insurance conversation that's been had a little bit with a couple board members and contacting me and whatever. And again, we're not making decisions tonight, but the conversation has been that we in Brandon pay 85% of an employee's health plan. And there was a discussion about moving it to 80-20 rather than 85-15.
Do you have the, those numbers that we were looking at today for the towns? Yes,
Here. I got a thousand more.
I got it.
So we, Seth was able to get through BLCT what every town is doing that is reported. And we are solidly with the 85-15, we're solidly in the pack. And I just did my final one that has the final yeah, what? There are some towns that pay 100%. There are some towns that don't pay. The leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, is the 85-15% that we have. I'm not seeing that number. You got those?
There were two different editions of the numbers that went out in the 2024 batch. They broke it down in the way that I think you're looking for the summary chart. And I don't have that one, but I can pull it up. In the 2025 batch, they broke it down a little bit differently. They broke it down with a median and an average for all the towns that responded.
So the average of the
So for an individual,
for two-person individual plans,
yeah, so for a single employee, the average is that the town is paying 93%.
93%.
For two adults, the average is that the town is paying 85%. And for adults and dependents, the average is that the town is paying 83%. And two adults and dependents, the average is the town is paying 83%.
So we're in line with the different towns right now. I'm just stating that as a fact. I'm not trying to sway the conversation at all. So now I'd like to open up the conversation.
So, and I would note that the towns that are paying 100% are not most of them, as looking at this chart, do not appear to be contributing for dependents. It's like they'll pay the employees, but they're on their own for their family. So that's how they can get away with paying 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just found the chart I was looking for, so that the towns that are paying 85%. Adults. No, I'm still.
So you're looking for the number of towns?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the number of towns that pay 85% are 20 out of 168. 50 out of 168 pay 100% for the individual.
Just for the individual,
11 out of 168 pay for 80%.
80%. And then there's only two below that.
Yeah.
So the largest majority pay what we're paying or more. Only 11 towns pay less than what we're paying. So, that opens a door. I know many years ago when we did this, we were targeting 80-20. And we did it in steps. And we got the, 85-15.
Here with that.
I don't have that information with me, but you,
16, 17, and 18, I think we went.
yeah, we did that. And then,
5%.
and then the next move we did actually was we got the same dollar savings by switching insurance company. And, that would have been the 80-20. And so we kind of stopped that. And then again, I went off the board. I can't say for sure exactly where it happened, but, I would love to see what anyone wants to do or feels.
Well, I'm going to say, in my experience at the various places that I have worked where this has happened, whenever the employer has cut the amount of its contribution, it's been offset by a raise. And it's like the employees, I mean, there's just always been this fear of losing employees over health insurance. And I mean, I don't know, but the job market is so weird right now in terms of who's available to work, what kind of work is available, and how much people expect to be paid. And healthcare seems to be like more important for a lot of people than anything else. So.
Ralph, are you leaning forward? So
I was getting ready to talk. Yeah, about the health insurance. I contacted, Rutland Northeast supervisor and talked to Brenda Fleming there, and she says they're at 20% and they've been there for several years. So, and they have a union. So what I'm saying is and I think that's the norm, you know what I mean? We pay 30%, where my wife works pays 30% for insurance. So I think as far as this community, I think 20%, I don't know this. This is my judgment. I think 20% is a low amount for the people in this community for what they pay for insurance. So I don't think that this is too much of an ask, 20%.
What would that gain you? I'm just talking, if you went that direction, what benefit you would get financially from them?
We established it's about $19,000 would be a 5% contribution more from the employees. It would be about a $19,000 savings to the town.
Over half.
Total.
Yes.
I mean, at GMP, we've been at 20% for at least 15 years.
I don't want to argue at all,
No.
but could I just give you a couple little pieces of information? I do want to let you all know that we're in the small employer group, right? Which is a different health insurance. GMP is in a big employer group. It's a different plan with different benefits. And the school district is not even in the groups. The school district is getting, they're getting teachers' health insurance, which is totally unrelated. So the benefits are not apples and apples.
my only real concern, and again, when this all started, I was involved and clearly was trying to get to 80-20. But right now we do also have a police union contract that the police are 85-15. And if we move to town, then the police are going to be upset because their union contract is going to stay in. So we would be again separating, having two different situations. And that always creates internal strife because they all share information with each other. So that can be a problem, but it doesn't mean that we don't do what isn't right for the town and the voters. Right? Yeah. Right?
I'd like to see us get to 20%. I think that's fair. And I know the police one's a tricky one since we just got a contract, but if we took the town up halfway one year with the intent on taking up the other half, 2.5% the following year, I think that would be less of a burden.
And who would
On-
be impacted? Highway and administrative.
Everybody but police.
Highway, wastewater, and the town office.
I don't know. I would struggle with making our employees pay more. We get a really good bang for our buck with our town staff. Everyone, police, highway, everyone. And we're already at the low end of towns, which is just going to make us less attractive in the event we need to hire either anyone, hire any position. You know, if they can go to Rutland and get way more or wherever, you know, that's going to be a defining factor for a lot of people. I know people my age, they don't even, you know, salary is sort of tertiary in what they're looking for. They're looking for healthcare benefits when they're applying for things.
So in the
So-
scope of where you see the overall budget heading, how valuable, how precious is that $19,000 saving?
Talking about 0.5%, right?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm open to the conversation, but I think if we're really strapped for the cap saving 0.5% somewhere, then that's a conversation.
Sorry about that.
We forgot in our select board member comments to say, please silence your systems.
I don't know how to silence my.
Pam?
No comment.
I think what comes out in this chart for me, Pam Douglas, I did a lot of books for a lot of businesses, and many like non-municipal, like business employers don't cover family. I mean, so you've got a really generous plan here if you're covering the entire family. Sometimes it's really just the employee 100%, and even the employee has, you know, a payment, and they don't cover family.
I think that's a fair point, but you know, historically, the appeal of municipal or government work is that it's not necessarily high wage, but it's stable and got good benefits.
Yeah, I don't think
Hesitate to erode that.
I don't think that's true anymore.
Yeah,
Sorry to say, it was true.
it was true. Now
I
it's
don't-
low
Was
wage.
true.
Now
It
it's
was
low
true.
wage and
But only,
benefits.
and my main point was that you have a generous plan
Sure.
compared to any other employers probably in the area. So, yes.
If I could rephrase my question, what do you meant by it? I recognize it's a little more than 0.5%, but what I really meant by it is how valuable is that 0.5% to you in the scope of where you see the overall budget heading? Is that half a percent like a deal breaker? Is it a big deal, small deal? How valuable is that 0.5% when you weigh out whether you're going to go there or not?
Well, and I guess another thing that we should be considering is that, you know, what we have on the very last page is, you know, kind of a play out of various COLA increases. And, you know, is that somewhere that we could be trading off higher COLA increase, more, the employee pays more on their health insurance? Like if we go to 80-20 on the health insurance, do we go with the 3.5 COLA increase instead of the 3.3 COLA increase? Or do we go 3.3 COLA increase instead of the 2.5 COLA increase?
Maybe increase the healthcare over 5 years to 1%. You know,
So 86-14, 87-13, 80.
until you get to the 80-80 or 80-20.
Right.
I would just like to see us exhaust a lot of other choices before we start digging into employee benefits, if we can help it.
Can I have just a qualifying?
Yep.
When you said that was $19,000, Is that $19,000 because the change in plans would yield a $19,000 savings? Or because the usage of the plans would yield a $19,000 savings?
So I took the existing spending on health insurance and multiplied it by 0.5%. Because
We'd
you
be
know what I'm saying?
using the same plan.
Right.
We'd just be asking the employees to pay more of the premium.
So the $19,000 is based on past usage.
based on today's staff with today's plans.
And the reason I ask that question is when you talk about trading off COLA increases and plan percentage changes, are they really apples and apples? Because the COLA is direct money into the paycheck, and the percentage of premium payment may not necessarily be. Right? If someone uses it a lot, if they use their health insurance a lot, then that 5% difference is a big deal to them. If someone doesn't use it very much, then that 5% change is like insignificant to them.
I guess I would maybe.
But the COLA is direct.
So I guess I would agree with you to the extent that they're not the same thing, in that the COLA is a percent of a much bigger number than the health insurance contribution percent, right? So if the COLA goes up 1%, so does, the pension contribution, so does the life insurance premium, like all of the stuff that's pegged to the wage or the salary, those also get stacked. The percent that the employee pays on the health insurance is just on whatever that premium is. So like they just released next year's premiums, and you can just go down and find the monthly premium, multiply it by the 12, and figure out what the savings is or what the extra cost would be. It has less impacts on the employee's pocket than a COLA change, and it has less impact on the taxpayers than a COLA change. The COLA change is pretty significant, and it's compounding, like it's going to continue on.
Mhm.
Do our employees, are they all on the same gold plan, or do they get to choose which?
The employees can choose any of the plans, but the town will only pay up to 85% of the gold. So if they choose silver, they could theoretically have no premium out of pocket, but they don't get a refund on what
Right.
is left, the difference. If they choose platinum, they will have a much higher out of pocket.
Okay.
All right, well, we discussed it.
Yeah.
Got some opinions.
Let me say,
Yep, go ahead.
for $19,000, I don't want to lose any employees either, but I want to be fair to everybody in the community that pays taxes, that we need to, we give our employees raises every year on this side of the equation. So we really need to look at the other side of the equation too, and keep them on the same scale as the people in this community that pay their wages. So I'm not looking to be, about this, but I think we really need to think hard about this to say, oh, it's only $19,000. If we have a chance to save the community $19,000, we need to look hard at it, not just dismiss it.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Again, this is the first time we're kicking these things around, so I wanted to have the conceptual conversations, and then we can think more, discuss more as we get to the end. Anybody else, anything else conceptually they want to talk about, or do we want to get into asking some direct questions on what we have here in front of us? Maybe it's question time. Who wants to ask the first question?
What is the first question?
Me?
What is the first question?
On any line item you got in there, tell us what department and what dollar figure you're questioning.
Wondering
and
about.
we can go from there.
I got one bottom of the first page, the rental code compliance. We have a note saying need to consider viability. I would love to consider the viability.
That's a big question,
Yeah.
right? So The actual arithmetic of what's going on is not complicated to explain. We have a rental housing code in Brandon that we've had for many years, 30 plus years. And we are finding that the landlords who comply most at the highest rates and provide the town with the certificate of compliance and allow the town to come in and make the inspection when a tenant changes and pay that $25 per apartment fee per year, those are the landlords that by and large are the multi-unit kind of management properties that have some big places in Brandon. We have not been as successful in getting compliance, meaning getting the fee or getting the inspector in when a tenant changes or getting the annual statement from the landlord that, yes, I have the carbon monoxide detector. Yes, I have this. Yes, I have that. We have not had the same level of success getting those from someone who might have a home with a little accessory dwelling unit that they're renting to a family member and they don't really feel like they're in business. They feel like they're in family. And there's a lot of those, I think when we first instituted this in Brandon, it was a time when many more of the apartments were like the second kind. They were more of a informal arrangement, and there were some questions about standards, and there were some tragedies that happened in Brandon related to substandard conditions. And at this point, I think we've maybe tipped the balance where more of our properties that are rentals are being run by professional management companies. So I asked Larry about it. Larry Stevens is our rental code officer, and he was attending a training, or I don't remember exactly the setting where he got this information, but the information that he got was that there's like 2 handfuls of communities in Vermont that even have a rental office at the local level. There was a period of time not too many years ago when most of us were on the board, when the state was making some indications like they were going to kind of do this for the towns, and eventually it didn't happen. So we were kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern for a while, waiting to see what happens. I think that it's probably time for an evaluation of, is this protecting tenants in the way that we had hoped it would? Is there value in doing that if it's working that way? And if so, then we need to increase compliance. Or if not, we need to maybe think about, this doesn't cover modern arrangements like Airbnbs, short-term rentals, like none of that stuff happens. This is just in like dedicated apartments, essentially.
Well, and it's interesting because this is something that came up when Jeff and I were working on the ordinance review, looking at this rental code that's been around for a while and doesn't talk about short-term rentals at all, or vacation rentals. And the one thing that I had thought was that we might ask the Planning Commission to review the rental code ordinance, see what things might actually still be valid and appropriate for us to be seeking compliance with and enforcement on, maybe addressing the short-term rental issue, and then having, if they look at that and report back to us, then it's like, is this something that's even worth having? And if it is, then how do we get people to comply? And that falls back onto Larry. One thing I might suggest, though, is $25 per unit is not very much, or especially if we are talking about large management companies. So I would suggest one of the first things we might want to do is raise that fee.
The other problem is, how much would we expect Larry to use up his time chasing $25?
Right.
That's the problem. The big companies he can contact and will make a difference, but.
Well, I'm not so
But
much concerned about chasing that fee as I am about people living in substandard housing. And there's nothing we can do about the people that live in their own homes that are substandard, but there may be something we can do about, the rentals.
I think the planning commission idea is a good idea, and I clearly agree that the Airbnb kind of thing we need to look at. The revenue source, maybe.
It's worth it. I did a very quick bit of research into this when we were doing the ordinance review, and there's most generous estimate I could come up with is like 10 Airbnbs that are at least consistently listed. There might be a few that pop up and go away, but it's worth considering. It's not an insane number that we're going to get a lot out of, I think.
Right, and are we gonna spend more
Exactly.
chasing that?
I have no opposition to baking something into the code about it, but it's how worth it is to spend a lot of effort on it.
Yeah.
Next question.
This is something we talked about. Doug and I talked about earlier was, we've got the $30,000 for wastewater administration as revenue. And we are currently not getting any money from the fire district for.
Water district, yeah.
Yep.
They do their building and do their servicing for them.
Yeah.
You send them a bill for time? You should.
Some arrangement was made at some point where, partly as a service to the taxpayers, it was thought that a quarterly bill that had both water and wastewater on it would be more convenient and more stable and predictable. Instead of, remember, the old way was the fire district would bill twice a year for water, and the town would kind of like, at some lag, bill twice a year for sewer and blah, blah, blah. So there was still 4 bills happening, but it was 2 from them, 2 from us. I think it was thought that it made sense to do it, and maybe it does make sense, but I don't believe there was any discussion. I'm not aware of it. It was before my time. I'm not sure what the level of discussion was between the town and the fire district. I just know that the town has ended up, instead of billing twice a year, we are now paying postage and bills for 4 times a year. And I think instead of, I don't know, the fire chief's here, I don't know, it's not his particular side of operations, but I think that the fire district used to cough out 2 bills a year, and they're not coughing any out anymore, is my guess.
So, and I'm not talking about you paying it personally, so.
Yeah.
One thing is though, we need the water department numbers to issue the sewer bills, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. So there's no way to meter sewer usage. It is all metered
It's all
off
based
of
on
the
the-
water usage. And it was, and again, it was, multiple bills. So the town would send 2 bills, the fire district would send 2 bills. It's the taxpayers and the usage water users are still paying all of the same. So the use is the rates are the same. Or that the cost to all of the users is going to be the same, whether it's billed by 2 departments or by 1.
Thanks. Jen?
It's not just a matter of mailing 4 bills out a year. They used to mail 2 bills, you used to mail 2 bills. So you're still mailing 4 bills. They should at least be paying the postage for 2 of those because it's theirs. Then you also have to look at the manpower to process all the incoming payments. Yes, you need the water bills to know how much to charge for the sewer, but that's still a lot of bills coming in. Somebody's keeping track of if they're past due or not. Then you got to send out letters for the past due people. They should be incurring some of that cost too, because some of it's water, some of it's sewer. So it's not just it's a service to them, and they should pay part of it. In my opinion.
Have we ever discussed it with their board?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, so maybe that's the first step. Maybe we got
Sure.
to.
Bring it up.
I might suggest maybe, as the town manager, maybe I'll ask the water superintendent, one-on-one first and see about what might be possible.
Yep.
And then they can talk about the prudential board, and you can talk as a select board.
Just make sure you're involved with the Prudential board also, because sometimes it falls through the cracks.
Okay. Okay. I know everybody's holding back and asking questions, so I'm gonna ask one. Under,
Where are you?
I'm on my big sheet, page 5. I don't know what it is on other sheets. It's under town admin.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's under the legal expense category. We got 7,500 in there. My conversation with Seth was, so past a couple of years, we had $230 one year, $720 one year, 3,000 roughly one year going back. I know you can never plan for exactly what's going to happen and what legal mess we might get into. However, with the sizable reserve that we now have, I don't know if we have to budget to the high end of that at this point, and was just wondering if it was feasible to lower that from 75 to $5,000 or $4,000 or some other number, and plan on, if something came up, that we would use some of our reserve there.
What's the hourly rate of the senior partner? I mean, there's going to be paralegal rates and admin rates, but like the hourly rate of the most senior attorney that we work with, do you know that?
We just got a letter. Don't have it at the top of my, I want to say $230.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
So that will, so 7,500 would get us
30 hours.
like 30 hours. There are very few legal matters that, I mean, it's either going to be a couple of hours to write a letter and do some research, or it's going to be 80 to 100 hours to fight. So, you know, I mean, so I think that, you know, budgeting 7,500 is kind of, well, you know, that'll get us a few letters written and and a lot of time that's all you need. A lot of time that's all you need. I think trying to budget for the lawsuits, I mean, we can't. I mean, that's kind of what the reserve is for. The reserve is for emergencies. It's also what our town insurance is for. So what I see the 7,500 as being is like the day-to-day kind of, we need a little research, we need a little of this, we need a little of that, and tax sale. No, because that's separate. Tax sale is separate because it comes out of the tax sale money. So this is more like, you know, we need some advice.
You accidentally stole some land that didn't.
Right, exactly.
It just happened.
Maybe,
Perhaps.
maybe not, maybe. But yeah, so, but that's
Turn that
exactly
page.
it. I mean, and so that requires some finessing, and it might be 30 hours, it might be 40 hours, whatever. But, you know, so I think 7,500, you know, if we go down to 5,000, I don't think that that's going to make a huge difference.
No.
I mean, but it is, I mean, if we get to the point where we're needing to find cuts, that's definitely a place to cut, with the understanding that if something big hits us, there's no way to budget for that annually anyway, and we do have insurance, and so. So I just said a whole lot and actually said nothing, because I'm a lawyer. That's what I do, and I'll charge you for that.
Yeah, probably $230, huh?
No, I charge way more than that.
When we have had an employment matter, we have used the league's attorneys. And we do try to use the league's attorneys for just general, like, hey, I think probably every town has had this question kind of thing. We try to use the town's attorneys really sparingly on matters where it's clear that the town's like an actual party to a proceeding, and that no one else is equipped to give the kind of advice that we require.
I make my suggestion clearly on the 3-year history. So-
Yes.
Yeah.
And I understand that,
If you want to bring it down to $3,000, like I'm happy to give that a whirl and be careful with it. I can tell you that we do have this land deal to untangle, which is going to hit this year's budget, really not next year's that we're planning here. So, I'm happy to do it with the understanding that if something extraordinary happens, I may be coming to you and letting you know that we're going to exceed the line.
But again, that's what our reserve is for, and we have very healthy reserve fund.
And I think Cecil's point, correct me if I'm wrong, was that
Somewhere buried in what I said.
if we're going to exceed $3,000 for a lawsuit or whatever, we're going to also exceed $7,500. So
Yeah.
why have that? You know.
So what number are you comfortable?
Right, 3,000. I'm 3,000.
3,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can make that change. Since you know, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay, you know what? Brent, you have your hand up?
Yeah, but she did as well.
She did, yeah. Okay, ladies before gentlemen, or
Okay.
Sexist.
Yeah, Brent Bueller. I'm looking at page 2, the police revenue. It's been like 29,000, 32,000, and you're projecting 10,500. And some of it says omit unless staffed up, but it appears that under the budget for the police department, it's fully staffed. So
Well, we're budgeting as if we're fully staffed, but we are not
Right.
yet fully staffed.
no,
That-
but aren't the expenses under the police department for salaries and all of that? It said something like lieutenant,
Yes.
officers,
Yes.
plus the chief.
Lieutenant and 3 or the chief and 4, right? Yes,
Okay.
that's all there.
Okay.
But until we actually have like human beings occupying those positions, they won't have enough officers to participate in stuff like the governor's highway safety program, which is where you get the revenue for holiday.
I understand
weekend.
that, but
Yeah.
the history since I've moved here is that we budget for a staffed police department and then spend that money on other things. So you're putting the money in again, but you're not recognizing the potential revenue for that money.
Well,
And so then it goes and we buy something or we do something, and it's not the police officers. It always seems to go somewhere else.
well, it
That's
went
been
to
great.
police budget. things,
Yes, it went
though.
to a police
It went to a
car.
police
Yeah, it
car.
went to a police car.
So, but yeah, so I mean, I hear where you're coming from, and it's like, unfortunately, it's like we have to put money in the budget for salaries because we want to hire these people, and if we don't have money in the budget for the salaries, we can't hire them. Whether or not we are going to hire them and realize revenues is riskier profits, but it's also, if we don't budget the revenue, then we get, like, say we budgeted that revenue. Say we're going to budget these thousands of dollars in that revenue, but we don't actually end up hiring those officers. That revenue doesn't come in. Suddenly we have a budget deficit because we were counting on revenue that we couldn't get, which
Not
the
if you
other
don't,
hand,
not if you don't spend the money on salaries that you
well,
budgeted.
if on the other hand, if we don't hire the officers and we don't spend that money, then yes, we can end up with a budget excess in the
Excess.
police department. And in the past, we have used that to purchase things that the police department needed
Build the fund
and to
balance.
build the fund balance. And so.
Correct.
So I mean, I don't have a problem with budgeting as if we have a full department for expenses, but not budgeting as if we have a full department for revenue, because it's much better to end up being like, oh, we ended up with
A little
a little extra, then shoot, we have a deficit of $30,000 because we budgeted that we were going to get this revenue.
Okay, we're also talking about capital improvement monies and stuff. And so you want to do a 0.5% or you want to do an appropriation or whatever you end up doing for capital improvements, which buys police vehicles, not the salaries, the police salaries. Capital improvements buy vehicles, not police salaries. So the history has been the money goes to somewhere else if we're not fully staffed. That's all I'm saying. And it continues. And it's continued since I've moved here, and I've been here almost 20 years. So anyway.
That's fair, sweet.
Pardon me?
That's a fair statement.
I guess my only response to the statement, and I understand exactly what you're saying, and I agree. This is a plan we're trying to make so that we backdoor get into the number that has to be raised by taxes. And you gotta have some numbers in there for revenues and some numbers in there for expenses as you kind of get to that. And we can look at, and we're also looking 10 months in advance and looking as far as 20 months before the end of the calendar year we're working on. So there's so many unknowns. It's very difficult. Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, this isn't a big question. It's just more curiosity. Under the legal advertising, because the reporter is in flux or whatever, you had to declare
Right.
the Rutland Herald, I guess it was, or was it the Addison? Addison, okay. And obviously it cost a lot more to do that. But if it turns out that the reporter is going to come back, can you change that? Or once you've made that determination, it has to stay that way for X period of time?
Additionally, they make the designation of the newspaper of record after the town meeting when they reorganize the select board. I think it was allowable to redesignate because the newspaper of record went defunct, essentially. I think it would be questionable to redesignate it again before town meeting.
Right. Conceivably, we could do it again in March if something.
Yes.
Okay, so I got a couple more I'll check out. Just for everyone's being quiet.
I got one when
Police.
Where, what page?
On mine it's page 8. Isn't you on a big one? Page 8.
Department 14 is police.
And my
Could be page.
item questioning on ED was the line for vehicle maintenance repair. We a year ago spent 10,600. We budgeted 15 for this one. We don't have many police officers driving cars around. And we've talked about buying another new police cruiser, which would be getting rid of the oldest one. So do we need to budget as much as 15,000 for next year if we buy a new car? Because that's the if we bought a new car and we get rid of an old car, is 15 necessary?
You could clearly drop that line if you want to.
Pardon?
You could clearly drop that line.
Why don't we just leave it as one we've notated as a potential to decrease? Another one. Did you say you had one?
I have one. Everyone want to see me make a lot of friends real quick?
Okay.
Are we obligated in any way to pay a stipend to select board members?
No.
Nope. It's yeah. We get a stipend. It's about 1,200 per person per year.
We have had in the past, we have had that number very flat for a long time.
Right.
We have had some select board members decline the stipend.
Right.
We've had selectmen decline, we've had selectmen donate some of it back to something else.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've also, on the other side of it, we've had discussion that if the school gets paid substantially more than we get, should we be getting more? I am now on highway. Oops, go ahead.
Just for the record, I do not need a stipend. So
Yeah. It wouldn't make any difference.
this,
But it may
I
make a
was shocked
difference.
to learn there was one, to be honest.
It may make a difference in the future, what people come out to run. I don't know.
I mean, I'm just to tee it up. I'm of two minds about it because I'm planning on donating mine to a few different things around town. Because I can deal without it and it's fine, and I'd rather see the community get that. But there are a lot of people who can only swing running for office if there's at least some money in it. So I'm not saying we should just blatantly get rid of it, but maybe that is worth some consideration if we're looking to pinch some pennies here.
So, and is that the $6,000?
It was on, yeah, $6,000. It's on page, I just had it.
Okay. Yeah, and just kind of on the idea that donating it or declining it, doesn't necessarily change the budget, whereas getting rid of it does. But, well, declining it would stay in, but yeah.
Or in department, and you want to look a little bit further down in that section. I think at this point, we are at a point where unless you have some hesitation or objection to the way that we've been doing the minutes lately, I think you probably could pull the plug on the $4,000 for the recording clerk.
Well, good point.
I feel like they're okay. There has been, there was a comment maybe two comments to you over the last few weeks that, they didn't feel like they measured up to the previous version, and they are not the same as the previous version, but I think they accomplish what's legally required, and I think they provide a fairly comprehensive view of the action of the board and then the generated discussion from the machine.
Yeah, I mean, no one's ever going to measure up to Charlene. And I know in the past there was some back and forth over what some select board members wanted the bare minimum, and some wanted as much as possible. I think the combination of what we're getting from the AI and the fact that the select board meetings are online, you can go and watch the whole thing if you don't think you're getting the whole picture. I mean, I think that I'm not a huge fan of AI, but for this particular thing, it does what we need. And I mean, I don't feel the need to have a live
I
stenographer.
think you've offended it.
I'm sorry.
I for one welcome our new robotic words.
You could do that 4,000. You could also do 3,000 in the planning commission clerk in department 12. But I think the DRB clerk at 1,500 probably ought to stay because there is a different level of decisions need to.
Well, they're quasi judicial.
Right, the decision.
Yeah, I mean, a quasi judicial needs to have better minutes than we do.
I never really read the minutes, but if there is a distinction between Charlene's minutes, maybe they were more comprehensive than the AI minutes. I don't really know. I wouldn't lose sight or recognition of the fact that we've got excellent reporting from the Dateline and from the reporter that we're no longer going to get of content of these meetings. So I really wouldn't steer away from more comprehensive minutes because you may have to rely on that.
Well, the minutes that we've been getting from the AI are they're not bad, and it takes a little getting used to how they're set out in terms of motions and votes, and then there's further discussion, and then there's a little more as you go further into it, you get more detail as you go along. I think the differences are you don't get a lot of who said what, which some people care about and some people don't. But again, that's what we have the recordings for. So I mean, I think those things working together, it's not going to be what we got from Charlene, and it's not going to be what we got from Stephen Jupiter, but they're still pretty, you get a sense of everything that happened, and you definitely get a sense of all the motions that were made and the votes that were taken. The thing that is missing the most is just kind of the general conversation. Like, you know, if there's a lot of discussion about an item, all of that discussion may not be captured. It may just say discussion about item, but that's what you would then go to the video for.
I mean, I think to Barry's point, though, I suspect, because I'm one of them, a lot of people went to the reporter for the minutes, you know, for the summary of things, rather than just reading the minutes, because you, like you said, you get more of an actual view of how intense the discussion was or whatever it is. So, you know, I can see cutting that budget line because this is adequate. But it might be worth keeping something in there in case we get someone that can do, you know, half as well as Charlene did for half as much money or whatever it is. You know, I'm open to cutting it if that's what we want to do. But I think it is worth keeping something in there for possibilities.
Brent.
Oh.
I have another question.
Brett, yeah, go ahead, Brett. Sorry.
Yes, on Brent Bueller again, on page 14, under economic development, the line item for $3,000, it just says economic development, 10-5-21-75,000. The actual in 24 was 727. Last 25 was 740. What is that line item that it's $3,000?
I would love to give you specifics here, but I'm going to come up short. So I can tell you that in the past, it was used for things like Brandon produced a DVD to distribute to potential property developers, you know, regarding land that was available, industrial park spots that were available, things like that. It's been used, I believe, to have a Brandon presence at certain regional trade shows to try to get businesses that were interested in expanding to consider Brandon for their expansion. I think Bill's reduction of it from the current budget of 6,000 to 3,000 is a little bit of a recognition that it's kind of an unfocused line item, and opportunities are not multitudinous there. So what you'll see on the line immediately following is that he's basically suggesting directing 2,000 of that $3,000 savings specifically to the Downtown Brandon Alliance, the DBA, which is our designated downtown organization. And that's a more focused kind of program that does help us to draw down some state funding for the designated downtown and gives us all the benefits that the designated downtown brings us as a town.
Okay, because it's only been like $750 for
Right.
a few years.
Right.
We're still at 3,000, so something's got to be happening. Okay, the other one under that is the historic preservation workbook,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
$5,000, because I know that's come up at the select board meetings.
Yeah.
And it was you were putting in for a grant for
I
$12,000.
did, right. So the workbook, the relaunch or update or whatever, there was a grant application made to the South Lake Champlain Communities Fund. That did not succeed. There was another grant application made to the Walter Surf Fund. That did not succeed. I've now gone to the trustees of public funds and asked for their participation to underwrite the workbook from that amount. If that's not available, this is kind of like the last resort, because at this point, we need this workbook to get off the ground with a little bit of funding for a photographer, an architect, and a graphic layout person. And then we actually need to like produce copies of it. And if we can't get some from the trustees, I'm suggesting that the select board consider funding it out of the general fund, because I don't know where else we can turn. And I will say there's two things the town does that we're doing with the state, largely on the state's money, and the state is expecting a contribution. One is the Downtown Brandon Alliance, which is the designated downtown program, and the other is the Certified Local Government Program, which essentially is historic preservation. So if we want to continue to participate in these things and the benefits that they give, like downtown tax credits and eligibility for certain grants for facade improvements and so on and so forth, I think we're going to need to show either some trustees money or some budget money pretty soon.
Is
gonna-
the workbook required?
No, this is, so the Historic Preservation Commission has the workbook on, like, they're trying to do an update post segment 6 for the workbook. The workbook is an aspirational document. It's recommendations that are given to downtown property owners, like, would you, when you're redoing your building, please consider these design standards. It's not binding. It's not required to have one. There are other things that the Certified Local Government Program encourages historic preservation groups to do. So they've encouraged us to think about things like outreach. Like, there was a concept of publishing some little booklets about, like, here's some historic Brandon stuff from outlying areas of the town or from the village, to spread the word of historic preservation, also to get people in the community to understand the assets that we have, to appreciate them. And so if the workbook is funded, this could also be used for making publications like walking tours or architectural studies or whatever. There's some outreach to the schools and events, like public events, and a presence for historic preservation at public events.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, because I've been kind of following the minutes of the workbook. And it looks like some of the things that they are discussing seem to be more land use than historic preservation, especially things like traffic and parking. And we have traffic ordinances for the traffic, and then there's state stuff for the traffic. And so I'm wondering if they can maybe narrow the focus of the workbook, which will make it less expensive.
Well, that was my point, because it was $5,000 in 2024 to do a workbook.
So that was not the workbook.
Yeah.
That was a $5,000 match for a state grant to have an actual firm come in and do the survey of the whole town, not just the downtown. Yes.
Okay. So what's the correlation? Okay. So thank you for answering.
Yeah, the workbook hasn't been updated for a while, and if you look at it,
because he said post segment 6,
Gotcha.
and I saw the $5,000
gotcha.
there. So the $5,000 that you're asking here, how does that correlate with the $12,000 you want from the trust fund?
If the trustees fund the workbook, I think the select board could remove the $5,000. It's there essentially as a stopgap if we fail in the application with the trustees.
Will we know before we get to our final?
Yeah.
They plan to meet in November, I think on the second Tuesday or something like that.
So you're anticipating a grander workbook if the trustees give you $12,000, then the workbook.
So the $12,000 workbook, that was the budget that the workbook group came up with as far as who they needed for professional services and what they needed to actually produce the physical things. If that isn't forthcoming from the trustees, they are going to have to either really narrow the focus of the workbook or abandon it at some point. Yes.
I got a question, Doug.
Yep.
I'm on page 9 with the police and professional development.
Yes.
It's $8,000.
Something like that. You ask them what they use it for?
Well, no, but looking over the last few years, it's been significantly less. Do we need the full amount in there?
All right, so it could be trimmed probably a little bit. I will say though, each officer, after they're certified, they're required to take a number of continuing education hours every year to maintain the certificate. I think that's what that is. We have a travel expense part that sometimes goes along with this. But like the professional development would be that would be like them actually taking the trainings. So it's reasonable to assume that a freshly graduated officer from the academy is not going to need professional development that year, but the next year they will. So right now, the only one that we have that's open right now, an open order for professional development, is Ethan is going to attend an active shooter training in New Hampshire. And there will be some, it's actually going to come up on the next select board warrant. So there'll be some expense on the travel line for the lodging for him, and there'll be some expense on the professional development line for the actual registration for the class. I don't believe Officer Cochran's going to need anything because she'll have had, a brand new police academy training. The chief has to take some, and I don't know, what we're going to be looking at with the other officers. I don't know. It could be brought down for sure. You want to bring it down to 6?
Yeah, I'm looking and so
That's like
24
$1,500 per.
5,800. Actual was just a little over 5,800. 25 was 5,800. Actual is just under this cycle. We have 8,000, but I assume that was based on an idea that we'd have more officers in fiscal year 26. And so, I think 6,000. $1,500.
16, right.
Yeah.
6,000 is $1,500 per
officer.
officer.
And some won't need any if they just finish the academy.
So, well, the question I have is, are there state continuing education standards? So, for example, when I had to do continuing legal education, no matter how long I'd been in practice, I had to have a certain number of hours
Right.
every year.
And that's what we're,
probably true for accountants, and it's probably,
that's what
continuing.
That's what we're funding.
And so if we know that they have to have X amount of hours per year.
But it's not like you pay a uniform rate, right? So like
Depends on the course.
an active shooter course that's 5 days residential might be different than, they have to do something on community policing that's super local, and they show up Tuesday afternoons for 2 hours for 3 weeks or something.
But that one residential shooter course may be enough to fulfill all the hours they need.
For that officer, yes. Yep.
So, yeah, because that's the other thing is like often the cost of the course and the number of the hours often are a factor of each other. So,
this is not going to be an inexpensive proposition.
right.
I will say I've actually had some community members and some community groups approach me as the emergency management director asking for some guidance on what to do if there's an active shooter situation at their place. So it's on people's minds. It seemed like a relevant course. It will satisfy his professional development requirements for the year, but we're going to pay him like we do because he's on duty. Then we're going to pay the course fee, and then we're going to pay for him to go over there and have 4 hotel nights or whatever the Monday through Friday thing works out to be.
Yep, go ahead, Janet. Sorry.
Page 8.
Page 8.
Yep, town clerk.
Yep.
So on there for elections, now that we don't mail ballots, you could see we budgeted 5,500, but only spent 971. Granted that and now we have another 5,500. Can that number go down?
It could go down. I'm actually not enamored of the idea of every other year that number going down and then having to go up the next year, because that's what happens, right? Every year we have town meeting in March. Every other year we have a primary in the summer and an election in November. And I just feel like it's a small enough number, but it's an annoying enough number that if we just fund it at a flat amount, I think that's smarter for us budget wise.
Maybe after we have a special, the election in November, maybe next year's budget, you'll have better numbers knowing that you're not mailing ballots or, you still mail the absentee ones that are requested. maybe that's the time to look at that number.
And November, general election are still by mail, aren't they?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. That's the town clerk's department. I think you're right. I think
My understanding is that statewide general election is still by mail, and it's just the towns that can elect not to be by mail, but
there was a while when the state was paying the postage,
right, which that
and
is-
then there was a while that they weren't. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly where things are right now. We'd have to have Sue talk.
Yes.
Yes, Trish.
Sorry if this is a really stupid question, but where's like the water and sewer and wastewater? stuff
So
in
water
there?
is the fire district. We don't touch.
Right, but like all the
Wastewater is an enterprise fund, so it doesn't get voted on by the voters. It doesn't affect the property tax. It happens separately, and traditionally in Brandon, it happens in June for a July 1st start.
So the question about trustee of public funds and whether or not they're going to put their budget towards that, because that's supposedly what the FAR trustee was about, was the sewer and wastewater. I was just trying to find that in the budget, but it's.
So the trustees are a little different. I mean, they're also like separate from this. They're going to meet in November. Right.
Did vote to give it to for the sewer wastewater, but that none of that would be in this.
It won't
budget
hit this,
because-
right? It hits the other budget. Yeah.
And I, for one, am also not a huge fan of counting on disbursements from the trustees of public funds to affect our line item in the budget. For a lot of reasons. One, I think that it's great for the town to have, like, maybe go for our mosquito spraying when we have out-of-pocket expenses that we haven't budgeted for the sewer. Or, you know, one of the ideas we were talking about earlier is like, you know, they came up with this new idea for how to clean those pits. And, you know, maybe we want to buy one of those machines ourselves. Maybe that's something. But using it just to fill in a budget line item, I don't think that's really fiscally responsible. I also think that, and I know that I am not in agreement with a lot of people in this room on this, but I think that that money, there are other things in this town that would benefit from that money as well. And for us to, like, every year take the entire amount that they have to give out to try and bring down our budget costs gives short shrift to other things in this town that could benefit from it. So.
Yeah, we have about 20 minutes left in tonight's meeting. I got a couple that I wanted to chuck out there. And they're all in highway, unfortunately, because I think our highway department does a great job. But on my paper here, it's on page 10. And I have 3 different items. First one. And there yet?
No, looking.
Okay,
Yeah, it's 10 for me.
it's tell me when you're there.
Okay.
I didn't get the reader.
Department
Reader's
15.
Digest large print one.
Yeah, well, it's good to attention, but I
Large print.
They're all slightly.
No, they don't print the same.
not the same. I'm sorry. Okay, so it's
Oh, I see.
item 15, you know, or department
Yeah,
15.
I got it.
Okay, we got it. So my 3 are my annual complaint on guardrails, because what we do is we put a set number in guardrails and then we don't spend any for a lot of years, and then we roll it all up and spend it all at once. So we got 10 in guardrails. I would love to see that number go down to 5. I see culverts in at 10,000 when yeah, we have had some times in there, but you know, we don't have any big box culverts or anything like that going in, so I wonder if that could be cut to 5. I don't know. And then the biggie of the whole thing is what we talked about earlier tonight, it's the salt. And the salt is looking at going up from 90 to 115. Some of that was a cost increase, but most of that was buying more salt. Yet Jeremy has talked about mixing salt and sand.
More salt. This is trying to hedge the bet on what the increase will be for salt next year, right? We're trying to predict for not this winter, but next winter.
Right.
So it's 1,000 tons of salt. And the concept was that since it went up 13% this year, we ought to count on something for next year. Now, did I overshoot it? Yes, I probably overshot it. I'm like most of you, I would really rather we budget the revenue side really conservatively and budget the expense side realistically or a little bit comfortably so that we're not caught at the end in a deficit. If you're comfortable with the fact that we've got a very healthy fund balance that's in the middle of our desired policy, and you want to trim the expenses down some with the understanding that road salt is kind of a not optional purchase. If that rate goes up another 10%, that's another like almost $10, and that gets you to $110,000. Nobody seemed to be anticipating a 13% increase in road salt this year. So can you cut it? Absolutely. Can you cut guardrails from 10 to 5 and culverts from 10 to 5? I talked to Jeremy this afternoon once I kind of got the hint that that was in the air, and he's okay. He's not offended. I had to give him another raise.
Okay,
Just kidding.
fair enough.
Third one this month.
That's right. Yep. He walks on water.
A lot easier.
It's the Dead Sea, right?
It's all the tires in the river. You can walk on the water.
Oh, the drought, the river's really
So
low.
what number do you think would be smart? You want to try 100,000
Whether it's
for
salt.
salt? And grab 15,000 there?
I don't think salt's one we
Less?
kind of
More?
hedge.
No,
I mess around with
I take it down to 100 and take 10 off at the moment.
Take 10 off.
105.
105.
105.
I mean, I think you can't,
I'd be
you don't want to
looking
pay
at
you don't really want to pay the long dollar late in the year for it.
Right.
Well, I will say you're right. Ralph brought up we had to make a few trips to Rutland. Again, not because we didn't budget enough or have enough quantity left, but they couldn't get it to us. And we paid a premium for a few loads of salt late in the winter.
There was a period this winter where it just wasn't available. I mean, like for people trying to just buy bags of it for themselves, it just wasn't there.
What did he feel on the culverts? I mean, did he feel it? Does he know what might be coming? I mean, I know you can't plan for every single thing, and these aren't box culverts either. Probably culverts on the dirt roads or things like that.
These are essentially culverts under dirt roads, yes. And when they do some ditching work along a dirt road, there's also sometimes where they'll replace a driveway culvert, and that ends up being a homeowner cost, but the town will do it for them, and the homeowner reimburses the town for the material cost. So we talked about it at some length, actually, and the reason that you saw the culvert line fairly consistently expended and budgeted and expended and budgeted is that Sean would look at the budget and buy that many culverts and just kind of keep them. And Jeremy said they had maybe more than they needed to be comfortable with stock for what we're doing. So they've kind of whittled down that stock. He told me they have about 10 sections of culvert on hand right now, which he was comfortable with. And if there's $5,000 in the budget, then that would, go some length toward unforeseen or toward expanded work.
But the town has the driveway culverts, they only charge for materials, not labor?
Believe so. Because we're actually, we need to do the ditching work. And the driveways is almost like this, like kind of impediment that we have to accommodate in the ditching.
Plus, isn't it usually in the town right away?
It's always in the towns right away. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Well, those are the recommendations I have.
Those are solid.
I'd go 5.5 and 105.
Okay.
And that's the last thing I'm going to bring up tonight. We have 15 minutes left.
So if we could see one that has those reductions that Doug just mentioned, the stenographers that we talked about maybe not needing, we could take those out.
A little bit of legal.
A little bit out of legal.
Go beg the fire district for some revenue.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll start with cutting the expenses before we, arm wrestle with Tom there.
I'm not.
It would be Ray that was,
We'd lose that one, I think.
yeah, but I could arm wrestle Ray. I think I could take Ray.
The fire just gonna pass it on.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
gonna be the bad guys and not us for it.
So police department vehicle maintenance, maybe take that down.
Yeah.
I got a question on the police department on the special wages.
Yeah.
This one year it was 24, we spent a lot. 25, we didn't spend anything. And now we got 25,000 the last 2 years. Do you know where?
So the specials wages is essentially going to be dependent on who's available to be hired. So these are like true part-time officers that, they don't want a full-time work. It's not our people on detail or anything like that. It's a new person. Maybe they work for the sheriff's office part-time as a deputy, or maybe they work for Pittsford part-time as an officer. And we would be getting them into Brandon part-time to do something like an event like the 4th of July weekend, or we'd be getting them in. Maybe we want someone in to do some speed control or something on a, regular basis.
I'm just saying on fiscal year 25, we didn't spend anything on that line item. And this year, do you know if we spent anything on this year's budget?
We haven't, because I know that there's nobody identified right now that would do that
So,
right now.
okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I just think,
And it's, so the 46,000 in 2024, what was that? That's pretty high for actual.
We had Anna at that time. I think she was considered a special officer.
Well, I thought.
Oh, that's our-
She wasn't the SRO. She was a regular officer, but she was not a level 3 officer. She was level 2 officer.
is that why we had so much that year?
Potentially, I couldn't tell you.
Yes.
Actually, I've got a question. Are you finished?
Go ahead.
What's the actual cost of the 4th of July, the whole parade, the whole day, if you add all the police and everything into it? Not to have it right now, the
Not
answer.
what the committee does, but what the town pays,
With all
or the
ex-
whole thing.
Now what the committee does. Are they paying all the extra police and everything?
No, they don't pay anything for the police.
Because usually there's a fair amount of officers and not just Brandon officers.
Yes, and those are like special officers that we pay.
So they would be under the 26 budget.
Yeah, we aren't directly paying for that, are we?
July 4th, right? That would be in the 26 for this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in fiscal 25, it would have been July 4th, 2024. And at that time, I think we were fully staffed.
So that's
Right.
why
So we didn't
Yes.
need any specials, right? But in fiscal 26, which is July 4th, 2025, we had to get a bunch of people in from other departments.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Something to look at.
Yeah.
And then maybe the continuing
Curious
education, we
six.
talked about taking that from 8
Yeah, I
to
know the
6,
committee does a lot of the nuts and bolts.
seeing where else we talked about. Oh, legal services, take it to 3.
I have a question. Clerical wages for the police department. With that new position that they hired part-time was because of the 911 calls. Is that what that position just was?
No, that was for a family medical leave absence from our permanent person. And
Changes with the 911.
no, so we've got someone in less than 20 hours a week to kind of cover some of that time.
Oh, sorry. Thinking along the Charlene subject, I was really thinking more big picture with that and more along the lines of the loss of the reporter. And is there anything in the budget plans, any line item anywhere that would provide for like an enhanced communication for the town, maybe on a quarterly basis or something, that would kind of give people status and updates on where this management team is on issues?
So we believe that redoing the website so it's more subscription based, so people can get stuff just passively sent to them, will fit into the budget without additional money.
I'm
as far-
talking like
we ha-
flyers or,
I did kind of in passing suggest maybe this is a year that the board might want to throw a flyer into the mail way before the town meeting, like before the book even gets published, might be a worthwhile way to reach all the voters
or
pretty much
even
all the-
quarterly. I mean, just
There-
something
so-
that would replace the
Like
functionality.
that's the line though. Like the line is if they want to develop or they want the town staff to develop or they want a committee of volunteers to develop like a town sponsored newsletter of some kind, I think that's a different decision and there's nothing in the budget contemplating that.
So knowing we are where we are, would it be prudent to maybe entertain putting something in the budget for that?
I think if the board thinks it's a good idea, yep.
Just throwing it out, that's all.
Yep. Yep.
Trish.
I thought the purpose of enhancing the website was so that all that stuff was there, so anybody could find it at any time, rather than the expense of printing and postage and something that's out of date already by the time somebody gets it.
I think we just know that the community that we're in has a pretty substantial population of people who are just not connected. And I'm not saying it's always going to be that way, but it's going to be that way for some time. There's going to be a number of people who cannot be reached by email.
And who aren't online.
And certainly not by social media.
Right.
Exactly. Like, and they're people that we need to make sure that we're still bringing into community and still, kind of interacting with back and forth in some way. We've talked about, if there is a mini newsletter or flyer, we've talked about maybe forgoing the postage and just distributing it by having little stacks of it at the little grocery stores and at the senior center and library, things like this. Yeah. Postage is a killer.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only going to
Nothing
keep
getting
going up
cheaper.
4 times a year. Yeah, I mean, you could make a killing. It's like invest in forever stamps and then like sell them. When it goes up again, be like,
Beanie Babies all over.
I got your forever stamps right here. Reset.
We do, yeah, we do it, but
I think we reset.
we do everything.
Okay, so I think we've kind of given you a lot of things to try to redo. You've got 2 minutes left or 3 minutes left. So I would like to at least, is there public comment on anything else other than this budget, which we need to get into tonight? Yes, Chris.
I just want to say that it's a different year because of the whole, we can't do a budget committee anymore, but I still think that you're really trying to get as much input as you can, and I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I know Seth and I both reached out to everyone that was on the budget committee and people that were applied for the budget committee this year to remind them. And with that said, the next budget workshop meeting will be October 20th, I believe.
Yep.
7 to 9 right here.
2 weeks.
Pardon? 2 weeks.
Yep.
2 weeks from today.
Do we have a notion of what the premise of that workshop is going to be?
Well, I think we'll
Look at Seth's new numbers.
look at the new numbers. I think we have to, start honing in a little more. I don't think we're going to need as many meetings as we've had the prior years, because I think this is fairly tight already. I mean, just by the questions that have been asked, but
Is there anything the board wants from a department head before the next meeting? I mean, I can get you all the stuff we've talked about tonight, but
I guess from the only other thing in my perspective is kind of, and it doesn't want to seem like I'm dumping on police, but if we get these officers that we're hoping to get, and we, get up to a chief and a lieutenant and 3 officers, where is the chief comfortable in as far as overtime and some numbers like that? I mean, these numbers still seem high, so I would love, if there's any other leeway in there, knowing how staff affects it and,
So we have talked about that.
okay.
He's concerned that at some point, if the town has on staff as many officers as its budget funds, that the state police at that point is going to say, okay, you're all set, like you're staffed at the level that you're taxing yourself to pay for. You're going to be responsible for the on-call in the overnights. Like they're not signed up for a permanent covering of Brandon during the overnights. They're doing it because we don't have as many officers as we're willing to pay for. And when we have as many officers as we're willing to pay for, it's going to become our responsibility.
And then we come back to the whole conundrum of, having a significant portion of the voters telling us that they wanted 24/7 coverage, and the fact that we can't do that without incurring enormous amounts of overtime payments. And so then the question is there a way to make, I think the fact that we've gone quite a while now with this kind of weird hybrid coverage, but we haven't, at least I haven't heard of any like enormous problems that have arisen from the fact that some calls aren't getting answered. And whether that means that perhaps the town could be comfortable with not 24/7 coverage. And I see a lot of shaking of head back there, but.
A lot of calls to get.
Yeah.
Daily.
I think we're in the realistic thing. If the taxpayers want to pay for 24-hour coverage, we gotta build up, not from
Overtime. We have
4
budget.
and 3, we have to add more people. And we've seen how hard that is, and it's gonna take a long time to build up to an office.
And I don't think it's possible. I just don't think it's possible to think that we alone, Brandon, Vermont, are going to put 10 officers in uniform in this town
And pay for it.
And even if we're willing to pay for it, I don't think it's going to happen because there's not an agency in Vermont right now that's fully staffed.
I mean, see,
In all honesty,
we've
I
struggled.
don't believe that the people who received that they wanted 24/7 coverage were really aware of what the cost of that would be. I don't mean financially, I mean number of officers and the delta between where we are and where we would need to be. I don't think that understanding is really there. I think people felt, 24-hour coverage would be just what we need. But if they really had an awareness of what that cost would be, both manpower and finances, they may reconsider whether that is a true need. And not to say they wouldn't want more coverage than what we have, but the reasonable coverage window may change.
I mean, one thing to think about, if we do get a lieutenant is exempt. If we get a lieutenant who's going to live in town, I mean, there's a person who's available for overtime or on-call without having us incur those costs. So that's one thing to look at. So, I mean, and I agree. I know a lot of calls are getting missed, but the question is, can we afford the kind of coverage where we can send someone out in the middle of the night on a call that's not a life or death situation, or, not a home invasion, the really serious crimes, as opposed to the kid that speeds down my street at 90 miles an hour every night at about 2 a.m., which, God help us, at
Goes by my house. too.
yeah, at some point that kid's going to wrap himself around a tree, and that scares me to death. But, I'd love to call the cops on him, but I know by the time I do, he's going to be gone because he is going fast.
Well, by the time they answer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but,
They don't
but
believe.
I mean, we need to find some way that we can afford the kind of coverage that will keep us all safe and secure in our homes and not have our kids wrapping themselves around trees. But- yeah.
And you need to involve the people who already, before you got to this gap in officers, there were people who already thought we had 24/7 coverage.
Yeah.
Well, we never did. I think you need to get that understanding, in the community of where we are and what makes sense, where that sweet spot is, and going forward, be aware, this is what makes sense for you and for us, and this is where it will be. Because there was a lot of misunderstanding leading up.
Yeah.
I think we need to stay under that threshold so where the state police still cover. We're still paying for it. State tax dollars. Nothing's free.
Well, I think what Seth was meaning was that if we budget for X amount of officers and then we get X amount of officers, then the state police are going to say, well, you have what you budgeted for. So,
We should
so it
make
could
sure,
be,
we should make sure we budget just under whatever that threshold is.
This is being recorded, but.
That's okay. I don't think the last few months have been that bad.
I think the state police are always there. It's not like they're not there, but.
I mean,
think-
and if we
think
have a
there's been
serious
learning
situation,
Experience on our current police department that before they used to go to the, dog barking in my neighborhood and the cat in the tree
Yeah.
calls.
Call
And they're, now realizing they don't do that and shouldn't do that. I think there's been an adjustment on their part as much as there has been on the expectation of the public. But I'm sure I am oversimplifying.
But you're right, there has been a change.
Well, I'm glad that the reporter won't be announcing what hours they work.
yeah.
That always bothered me. I'm like, okay, criminals, this is your window.
Okay.
Which is why they
I-
chooses to.
I wish they would change. I wish they would work a night or two a week just to change their schedule up, just to put people on notice that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
wow, somebody is working at night.
So, Select Board still has one executive session item tonight, so I would like to ask for a recess.
Yeah, I need
10-minute recess. Thank you.
I will move that we go into session per 1 VSA sub regarding the appointment or evaluation of a public officer employee to include.
I'll second that.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, motion and a second to enter executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Make a motion to come out of executive session.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.